In the previous tutorial, we covered the basic motor setup. In this particular tutorial, I'm going to be covering how to make a more advanced logic setup that would maybe, for example, be seen in a vehicle. We're going to add in a control element, in this case the vehicle seat. Now the vehicle seat has two properties, two new properties you may have not seen before. It has a throttle argument and a steer argument. It's also got a seated argument. These are outputs. If you see a small dot, that's an output. If you see one of those, a ring, that's an input. So the dot goes into the ring. Now what we're going to be using is the throttle. Now we're going to need one more part, and this is the other new part you might have not seen before, and it's the multiplication. So we're going to just add that in here. Now the multiplication has two inputs, a second value and a first value, and it simply multiplies the two numbers together. So in this case, throttle, as it says in the description, returns 1 if you put in forward, returns -1 if it's in reverse, and otherwise returns 0. So I'm just going to simply put this value in here, and now this is going to be our speed value. So we're going to minus or +1 and multiply that by the speed. So what it means is if we drive forwards, this output will be, so in this case if we set this value, I'm going to set this back to 100 just like in our previous example. I'm going to set this to, this is our acceleration, so I'm going to set that to 4, and our torque is going to be 1000. Now, since speed is 100, what this multiplication block does is if I put an input forwards, the input under forwards will return 100. However, if you put in backwards, it will return -100. And if you don't put any input, it returns 0, and 0 multiplied by 100 equals 0. Basic maths. This is one of the many ways you can do a driver input. Now, after this, all you need is a motor to be set up. So in this case, we're just going to go to motor, there's the motor block. Now similarly to this setup, we're going to need two parts, so I'm just going to actually clone this using Shift-D. You can obviously set this as different keybinds. Okay. Now again, the motor has no configurations, however it does have some logic. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this. This, remember, is our speed. So I'm going to put that to speed. This, remember, is our torque. And this is our acceleration. Now this is the full setup, all you need. Now something you may know or have a struggle dealing with is that sometimes if you have a motor on one side of a car and then a motor on the other side of the car, it can sometimes lead to an issue where one wheel is reversed while the other wheel goes forwards. Fast way to fix that, I'll show you in a second, but let me just first show you this actually works. So if I start moving forwards, it's going to start rotating the part. So I'm pressing in W right now. If I let go of W, it's going to start slowing down the motor until it stops. And then if I press in S, aka reverse, it will suddenly go in reverse. Now if I add this to a car, you'll be able to see it moving forwards and backwards. So let me do that real quick. Now something you may notice is once I activate this build, this is probably going to start going in circles once I activate the driver's seat. Yeah, there you go. It's going in circles. And that can be annoying for some, because you maybe don't want it to be driving in circles. So I'm going to show you a really fast fix, and once I add another part, the negative part, this will be an even faster fix. But until then, this is a really nice and elegant way of fixing this problem. So simply, there's two ways to do this. However, I'm going to show you the way I recommend, just because it's more efficient. So subtraction. You're going to need a subtraction block, and then all you're going to need is a constant block. This constant block by default is 0. You can see the value here. I'm going to put it at the front. It's important that we put it at the front. So it's first value minus second value. So I'm going to put the 0 to the front, and then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this value, which is the end result of multiplying speed, and I'm going to remove speed from one side, and then I'm going to take this value and we're just going to put it here in speed. So what this actually does is this makes the value negative. So it will make the wheels go in reverse. that goes in reverse, and that goes forwards. So you can see that it now successfully goes forwards and reverse based on the inputs that I've shown earlier. So that's all that's really required for motors. Some troubleshooting options: if your motors aren't working, increase the torque. If you haven't noticed any change, make sure that none of the parts are welded. And if you haven't noticed any change, make sure that you still have acceleration set. It's very important that acceleration is set. And that's everything.